Hello, I'm Kyle Spyrides, author of Decide Your Destiny and custodian of the Decide Your Destiny
And I'm
movement.
Angela Talent, authors of Poems from a Lost Soul and host of the Relatively Damaged podcast. And this is the destiny of your soul. Okay, we almost got it perfect on our first try.
We'll keep trying like synchronized swimming.
Sometimes you just got to have fun with it. So last week we talked about noticing and asking questions. In fact, we sent you away with some homework, specifically noticing thoughts and asking the question, what am I called to do? If you did any of that homework and you want to share, we would love to hear from you, please. If not, that's cool. If you did it on your own and you don't want to share, we're cool with that too. You can also email us with the subject line Kyle or Angela at the destiny of your soul at gmail.com. So we now have an email address that we both can check. We do. Yeah.
Yes.
So this week, though, we're talking about what are you inflicting on yourself? Again, we pulled this from Kyle's book, his second chapter of Decide Your Destiny.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you want to do that today? Do you want to give us a little opening? Like, what were you thinking before we dive in?
Yeah. So second chapter in, I guess what I was, and I talked about the soul in the first chapter, but I guess I was just considering how much turmoil we put ourselves through, and how, something like how powerful our mind is. And if it's geared in the wrong direction, it tyrannizes our life. And I think we've got to be really aware of what we're inflicting on our soul, because my personal belief, and I'm sure lots of people share this, is that, our soul continues on. And so what we do here matters. Everything matters. So what we do here, the integrity of our soul matters. And I think that just amplifies the importance of the decisions you make. And so the book obviously Decide Your Destiny, but being aware of how you might be inflicting your soul by taking a shortcut, or, thinking in limit and scarcity and not thinking about the abundance of your soul's lifetimes and how much wisdom you have within yourselves, I think is one of the many ways that you can hold yourself back, not just in this lifetime, but I truly believe in the next and the next. And so, so for me, that's one important thing is, it's like, when you think about, I'm investing for the next 4 years of my life in university, or I'm just got to go to school for this amount of time and then I'm done. And I think we always we always think in finish points, like, once I get retired, or once I do this, or once I start my business, or once. And it's funny because we're always looking at that finish point, but I think we can all agree that when we get there, it's not quite what we think it is. And we got to
a friend of mine just said the other day, as soon as I get my life settled, then I'll get a boyfriend. And I said, here's a news flash. it never gets settled.
That ain't gonna happen.
Not unless you want it. Then like, unless you create it, and then and even then it's gonna get disrupted, I think.
Yeah. That's the whole universe, we're beings floating around on a rock in this universe that, somehow are surviving and thriving and living. And it's just, there's so much that's going on, so much energy in motion, and so many different frequencies. And I think the point or purpose that I find of life is to actually align yourself and channel into the higher frequencies that you want to kind of get into play with, and not be wiped out when things don't go to plan. That's a big part of it. Definitely plan, definitely have your goals, definitely set everything up, but be aware that life does its own thing too, and you got to be adaptable. And I think that's really important. And also the power of yourself, the power of you as an energetic being. That it goes beyond the physical. It's a very important thing to, I think, understand. And I think it's a very important thing to help people out of mental sort of entrapment of,
Yeah.
of limit. I've got limited time. I've got limited this. I've got limited that. But
Yeah, I
everything's
have
scarcity.
this story as you're talking about energy, emotion, energy, emotion, right? Also, I'm thinking of like quantum physics and how as you keep diving deeper and deeper and deeper into our cells, into atoms, into what quarks. I don't know all the terminology because I'm not a quantum physics scientist, but the reality is we are energy. And I remember telling my daughter, that chair you're sitting on is not solid. And she's like, yes, it is. And we got into a really fun conversation with her challenging the idea. And I said, okay, well, explain. And then she'd be like, now and we'd go back and forth. And I'd be like, see, so if it's full of energy, if at its very core there is nothing but energy there, is it solid? And she's like, no.
Yeah.
Darn it.
Darn it, you won this round. I'm going to get you.
That's right. But if we think about our bodies as energy, so I take the idea of the chair, and our body is energy. And now everything changes. All of a sudden, I am no longer this physical being on this physical planet. I am also this energy, because I think we live in this reality which says, the table is solid, the chair is solid, I'm not going to fall through it. That sometimes it can become a little bit of a mind game of what's happening. But back to the energy, emotion, and self-inflicting things on ourselves, sometimes that energy can get stuck. And when I say that, I say that on a subconscious level. We don't even realize what we're doing. Our bodies have taken over. We're used to certain feelings. We know what those feelings are like, and it's more comfortable just to behave that way. So, like, one of the things I recently said is, if someone is giving me feedback and I don't like it, it's probably a good thing that I'm hearing that feedback, and a really great sign that I'm triggered by it. And then it's definitely something I need to look at, and usually accept that I do.
Yes. Yeah. If there's something that irks you, it's a sign that there is a lesson or some truth, or generally something that you're not confronting, and it's like, oh, okay. And it's important to look for the things that irk you, because usually the things that irk you, like you said, that's where your energy is getting flagged. Why does that irk you? Why does, like, when I had family or different people like tell me, oh, Carl, you've got to do this, you've got to get that done, you get that done. And it would irk me because I was telling myself that I need to get those things done, and then they were just adding to the pile. And then it was just like, wait a minute, why am I not getting it done? Like, what is that? What's that energy block?
Yeah. Or like me, earlier this week, I wanted, I was frustrated because my daughter, one of them, wouldn't get up and get ready for school. And then I'm frustrated, and we're in the car on our way to school. And I'm like, look, I'm really frustrated that you're not getting up for school, because now I'm going to be late for my phone call. I'm sitting there and I'm hearing this come out of my mouth. And again, subconscious, this is a normal old pattern of mine that I used to have on a regular basis. And I'm catching myself. I'm blaming her for my frustration. I can set a boundary. If she doesn't get up in time for school, I don't have to take her. What? Okay, so I'm right now blaming her was not helpful. I had to take responsibility for me. Did she need to know that it's not cool? She really needs to go to school? Absolutely. Did I need to blame her for my feeling? Not at all. And that's where the problem was.
Good on you for catching yourself, though. I mean, well done. Huge win.
I think, that, really thinking about and pondering, what am I self-inflicting, right? I was self-inflicting that pain and suffering on me.
Yeah.
And her, and then I was projecting it as if it was her fault.
Yeah.
that I was mad.
Yeah.
And it wasn't her fault. I chose to be angry,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I
It's,
didn't even realize I was choosing it.
yep. And that's where sometimes the energy in motion can become like if we can't control it, or if we can't kind of get reins on it and steer it, and it's very challenging in those moments. Like I know myself, sometimes, like, and it's so funny, the people closest to you that you love the most, that spend the most time with you, can receive the shittiest sides of you as well, and you receive the shittiest sides of them. You're like, what sort of deal is this? Like, I've got to go
Yeah.
out and deal with the world all day, people I don't know, but like with you, like, yeah. And so I notice sometimes, like, maybe when my attitude is a little bit shot, and I could have maybe just not said those few words, or not, like I could have just maybe worked out a better way of saying it, or delivery, or things like that, and that can avoid so much so much like upset, or just misalignment, or having to explain later. And so it's very interesting to kind of try and catch it. It's a cool challenge. Try to catch yourself when that energy is in motion. You're like, it's bubbling, bubbling, bubbling. But I think if you can catch yourself early when the
Yeah.
bubbling starts, and just start steering it, and it's kind of like even repetition. You think about, like, how much indoctrination, or how much programming, or how much negative feedback loops we've had wired in our brain, and just like connected. And so if we can just repeat something on the other side, and my grandmother was a counselor for 60 years, and she had this great she had this little doll. It was so funny. So from way back in the day, she had this doll called the dreaded doll. And what you used to do when you were like angry, or when you like when you had like some sort of feelings that were stirring you up, and maybe you were about to go and shout at someone, whatever it is, like, you grab the dreaded doll, and then you swing it, and you hit it against something. You go, drat it, drat it, drat it. And I was like looking at this old doll that was like, I don't know, made in the 40s or something. And I was like, here we go. Let's give this thing a whirl. But it's
Yeah, like
it's a tool to find an outlet, or find a way. I mean, for me, like when I was writing that chapter, self-inflicting, life got so heavy and hard and pressurized that I was, who knows what I was going to do, what sort of dark path I was going to go down, and not just the negative thoughts, but because I was getting abuse outside of my life. Then it's kind of like, what happens? It's like your environment. You get abuse outside of your life, or outside of your body. In your environment, you get abuse, and then you go, okay, well, now I'm going to abuse myself, and it's kind of like that mirroring, like we double down on whatever our environment is. So, someone who's abused in a relationship might pick up, another habit of drinking, drinking heavily and messing up your life. That's another form to me of self-abuse, so,
Right.
it was, I had an outlet though. I had, okay, I'm going to play rugby for the Springboks. And I might have said this on the last episode, but that was kind of like the goal. That was the thing that was getting me out of, the darkest of thoughts, the darkest of times, and getting me through. It was like that little bit of light through the the shadows, through the cave. So I think big tool, or maybe a takeaway, is, if it, and this is in chapter 2, I talk about your cosmic goal and setting up your cosmic goal. So the chapter, and then there's this big exercise that takes up pretty much the size of another chapter, and I discussed the importance of cosmic goal. That pretty much took me out of terrible thoughts in a terrible direction. So maybe that could be the takeaway for today, for people to find that. And I'm trying to think of it. It's kind of like, when maybe it's Coast Guard, when someone's like lost, they fall off their boat, or like the boat blows up or whatever in the ocean, and the Coast Guard comes over and lifts them out of the ocean, And so the way that I look at your cosmic goal, which really, cosmic meaning just big, grand, audacious. I was like, I'm going to play international rugby for the Springboks. I was in Australia now. I was an Australian citizen. How was I even going to get there? But it was just where I was directing myself. Bruce Lee says it's not just about getting to that specific goal. It's that goal is moving you out of somewhere and it's moving you towards somewhere better. And that was the whole thing.
Yeah.
So the Coast Guard pulls you out of the ocean. And so the cosmic goal, the takeaway today would be find a goal that's going to pull you out of a current way.
What goal can you have that will help pull you out? Now, I want to go back to something you said about just the ideas, like you were talking about the abuse and things like that, and then inflicting that on yourself. And I think also what can happen is we can get addicted to that, to beating ourselves up, or deciding we are, for instance, a burden, or deciding we are something that we're not because of all these messages that we got in other places. And, like, so Joe Dispenza says 95% of who we are as adults is so habituated through repetition that the body has been programmed to be the mind, and the body, not the conscious mind, is running the show. So if I'm used to running that program, then my mind can go on hiatus and I can just behave in my life. I can just go out and, day in and day out, do the same things over and over and over again. And I think that's where it's really hard to catch that self-infliction, right? I'm trying to think of all the steps I do. And we talked about noticing last week, and really that's just noticing the thoughts, the ideas, whatever, not judging them, not anything like that. That's where I started. But I don't think I really started catching stuff until later, when I really started getting into a little bit longer meditations and really trying to connect with myself. And early on, I think that would have been too much. I really think that would have been too much. Now, the other thing I do want to talk about is that darn goal, because I'll tell you what, there was a time in my life that if I didn't meet a goal, that gave me permission to beat myself up. So I couldn't give myself a cosmic goal. Heaven forbid I give myself a cosmic goal that I absolutely
that'll be a huge beat down.
Because I would. But now I realize it's just there to help propel me along the journey. But that's, which is a hard shift if you're not used to it. I think that can be difficult, and it takes practice. And it maybe by calling it a cosmic goal, then it gives me permission to not achieve it. Or if I achieve it, wouldn't that be a fantastic surprise?
Yep. Well, see, the thing is, the way that I look at, I guess, say some of the bad emotions, or like definitely, I think
maybe
if
dysregulating emotions instead of bad. I hate calling them bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like that thing where fear can be good if you utilize it in the right way, and then, but I guess to what you're saying, definitely, like if you're beating yourself up every time, then it's kind of like you're creating that negative, like, experience, that negative feedback loop. But so some of my goals, some of the cosmic goals, like I got to at a later stage, like the book was like a gigantic, how I'm going to put this bloody thing together, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it by this date. I'm going to do it, and it kept pushing back, and so it really started to come together when I was hard on myself. But I guess, and it's kind of like that thing where you use fear in a positive way. You can use, life is everything. I did a video yesterday. I was talking about, like, don't be afraid to be touched by the negative. Don't be afraid to be touched by those experiences. And if we're just all looking for positive and fluffy dogs and rainbows, then we're missing out on so much of life.
I think in the video you used like bunny rabbits and something, and I was dying. Yes, fairy floss. something else. But I love that because you were talking, I think, about calling family and checking in on family. And I think it was grandma that was afraid of, I think she was afraid of being a burden. She didn't want you worrying about the load shedding and things like that happening in Africa and how hard it's getting. And I think you were saying something to the effect of, well, who am I if I can't handle that? Like, what kind of grandson would I be if I couldn't call you and you couldn't share that burden with me? And, you know, it kind of goes to that community again, right? We are stronger together. It's like the way they make rope. It's a little strand, many little strands make a strong rope. And if we look at ourselves as many little strands, then if one piece of the rope starts to break, then the rest of us can hopefully keep it together until that piece can be repaired. You know, instead of the whole thing just crashing, you know, just dropping the ball or whatever the rope is holding. And I never really thought of it that way before, actually, but I like that analogy.
That is very, very. I love that. That is very philosophical. I feel like am I chatting to Plato here? What's going on? You know, like that. That is brilliant. And just on that, I think if you think of the little every string, each string breaks. It's kind of like the string. Each string is connection and communication. Because as soon as communication breaks down, and like as soon as communication breaks down in a marriage, the marriage breaks down. In a relationship, in anything. Like, so I can't remember where the exact quote came from, but it was something about, you know, as soon as the death of communication onsets the death of like pretty much everything. Like so communication is such like an important thing that we don't realize. And you know, we're in a world where we can communicate so well, so maybe we don't realize the importance of it. But when we get shut down, or when we go, oh, you know, I shared this, you know, or I really strongly felt like sharing this, or I stand for this, but you know, the PC police or the whatever police or the, you know, anti-me police came at me and attacked me, and now I'm not going to share anything ever again. It's like, okay, wait a minute. So what are you going to go do now? All your beliefs, all your thoughts, or you're going to go inward and hold that stuff. And then we go, wait a minute, why are so many people dealing with mental health? Well, maybe it's because we grab the pitchforks and we go and burn somebody anytime maybe they say something that like maybe a group think doesn't agree with. And I've noticed that
or they're having a bad day, you know, heaven forbid someone have a bad day, you know, and then we get the pitchfork and be like, oh man, you're not allowed to have a bad day because we're not allowed to have a bad day. And that's not true. You know, if my kids, for instance, I love using them because you know what, kids are, they will teach you who you are. They have taught me who I am to know him. But when they get angry or say something, that is so about them. The other thing I really also want to point out is there is so much that happens inside of us all of the time. There's so much that happens inside of Kyle. There's so much that happens in my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter, my caregiver, what have you, my mom, all these people, right? And we think we know them. We think we know what's happening, and we assume that when they're yelling at us, that they've had the same experiences that we have had, and that there's no reason for them to be upset. And I know that's not true. It is really hard to break free from that. And that is a place where I think we self-inflict pain and suffering again, or, you know, on ourselves, because we take on what someone else is doing or saying in anger, frustration, sadness, instead of hearing, I don't know if it's what they're saying. I don't know what word to use here. Instead of hearing through the message to what they're really needing, you know, and being calm enough to stay with them through those dysregulating feelings. You know, if we don't do that, then we're inflicting more pain even on ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had a friend, and one other thing I wanted to say with the rope was, it's another thing with the Roman thing. I can't remember what it's called, but when they would tie sticks together, and each time they tied more and more sticks together, the sticks would get, like as a phenomenon, the sticks would get multiplicatively stronger. So they'd multiply. So it wouldn't be like one stick plus two stick is 2 times the force and strength. It would multiply. And I think that's the same thing with the rope, with community, with coming together. Our solutions can multiply. And it's funny because in some countries in the world, people are very how would I say, very comfortable talking about how corrupt their government is, or their leaders are, or their, the lobbyists are, and all these sorts of things. So it's very interesting because you talk about that and then you come back to a different country, and there's corruption in different ways, different levels, or different sort of, hey, if you do this, here's a bit of real estate here, here's a bit of lobbying here, here's a bit of, I'll sort you out there. But it's so interesting because, listening to family and friends talking about where they are and the corruption that they're experiencing, and then they talk about, it's tax money is easy money, just charge, and all that sort of thing. And you just go, wow, like how much could we solve if we came together, as communities? Like, have we gone too complicated? Have we relied too much on authorities? And I'm not someone who's I don't even know what the belief quadrant is. There's so many different labels, but I'm not believing like, oh, we don't need any governance, we don't need any. Like, I'm 100%. We need law, we need order, we need all that sort of stuff. We need a judiciary system, but even that is flawed because there's a great study on what the rate of a guilty conviction is for judges before lunch compared to after lunch. And it's like this huge split, and you're like, well, we're humans. Like, this is something we're working with, and it's that flaw. But I feel like if we can come together, if we have councils, if we have people, if we don't have this, and it all, for me, a lot of it comes back to limit and scarcity, and it's a tool used by some institutions to drive up urgency. There's only 200 water bottles here, just letting you know, well, you clear out your stock, you have a great sale for that. So that limit, that sort of scarcity creates that sort of urgency and that attention. And so for me, I just think that we can do so much together if we come together as a community and we connect and we're authentic and we open up and say, yeah, look, maybe we'll get rid of that slot where I, just before lunch, for the judge, maybe I'll, have a quick bite to eat, or I'll go have a snack, or, I know I'm in this professional frame, and, but maybe I'll go and actually go out, have a quick snack before the next person, or whatever it is, like we can change things once we get into communication and connection. You can change the strict structures of the systems once we get into communication and connection. And I think it's such a powerful thing when you're talking about the string, and the same thing with the stick. Like, we become multiplicatively stronger together. We can solve things out together. And that's one of the things that I love about what we're doing, because your book like lends strength to my book, and then my book lends strength, and this whole thing like just can grow and build. So on that note, I would love to hear your poem, if that's okay.
Yes, I did write a poem for today's episode. I call it Self-Inflicted. I couldn't help it. I self-inflicted more pain and suffering. It was all I knew, even as I grew. Instead of succeed, I aimed to give away my pain, until it was that I realized self-sabotage wasn't the way. But the pain stayed, and if anything, it grew, as I found myself curled in a ball, crying on the floor, hiding my fear, hiding my emotions, until one day I started to gain confidence in taking apart, in putting together the puzzle of life. And then I realized that any movement out of the rut, out of what I knew, even if it was small, was the way I was going to go.
I love that.
So I think, go ahead. I want to hear what you said. What you say.
That made me think of the sort of light, like that little bit of like light out, and that sort of leading light, when you're in that self-infliction, whether it's beautiful poem. I agree with you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
When you're in that place of self-infliction, and whatever degree it is or level it is, it's very dark, and I just love that poem. It kind of made me feel that light out, and it also made me think of And look, maybe I'm just getting something out of it that's not quite there in the poem, but I think that's the beauty of poem. It can spark things in you. And for me, it really sparked how, and Kathleen just said it about the communication connection.
Yep.
Like self-infliction, for me, a big part of self-infliction was not communicating and not connecting with people, because feeling like this overwhelm of trauma and challenges and pain was mine to burden quietly. Now, it's all of our, like you said, with your daughter, with you, that experience, like it's all of our things to own responsibility of and grow and learn through our own lives, and what God's put through before us, what the world's put before us. But we're not here meant to just fix it all on ourselves. And it's what we're talking about, community, and connection, and that communication. Talking about it, sharing about it
Yeah.
is not saying, here, have it, solve it. It's saying,
Well,
yeah.
and I think in what you're saying, it just hit me. I think I had this idea that I literally created it on my own, that all of these past stories, choices, things, the reality of it is, as you're speaking about community, is it was also the people around me who contributed to how I interpreted those stories and those beliefs. And it wasn't just me. I never really thought of that before. That's so fascinating. So not only do we injure each other, but then we can help heal each other. And where do we want to be on that spectrum? So we can self-inflict we can inflict on ourselves. And when we're inflicting on ourselves, we're inflicting on others. So what is it that we want to inflict?
Yes, exactly. And influence, maybe like the next word evolving from this is influence. Like, what do we want to influence in our lives, influence in other people's lives? And I think a big, like you said there, it was great, because it's a big part of it is perspective. Like, if we can shift perspective, if I can, listen to, like, my grandmother yesterday in Africa, and just chatting to her and just going, hearing some of the situation and going, look, I've got another goal now. I've got to crack you out of that country. Like, I've got to crack you out of that environment. Like, if everything's just deteriorating around you, and then obviously, like, if things are deteriorating around you, then what happens? Your spirit, your energy, your communication, your relationships start to deteriorate as well. And it's interesting,
because what happens is we go into fight or flight, and what happens in panic mode or fight or flight is we literally go like this, and we see tunnel vision. So then the very next choice that looks like it's going to work is the one I choose, instead of coming from a different perspective where there are other opportunities, which is not healthy. This is why so many families get stuck in lower middle class, lower class, and some of those dynamics is because they're constantly in panic mode. So how do you even help them get out of panic mode? Well, we have to teach emotional intelligence, I think, and we have to teach those things because we were given those things. And as far as I'm concerned, when I know something or I have knowledge in something that someone else may not know, first I need to check and see if they know it, right? Because they may know it. But then it's my job to share it. So it's my job to talk about these things because God gave this information to me, and it would be remiss of me to withhold something that has blessed me so wonderfully.
Yeah, and it's a proactive approach that you're taking, and it requires a proactive approach to have communication and conversation, and to take what we know and see how it can and help. And the biggest thing that I noticed was that the kind of, when I used to go back to that country, and it was different. It was a different time, and all that, there was a lot more communication and connection between family. But as the country became more corrupted, and basic systems of energy and everything was like limited to people, and like all, as it kind of degraded on itself, the communication and connection with family degraded on itself as well. So it's interesting, the environment, and then that's where you have to really push yourself out and go, I'm dealing with this, I'm coming home after a full day's work, for pittance, and then I'm having to cook by candlelight, and then I'm like, all these different challenges, and then obviously then there's more break-ins and all these different things, and
Yeah.
all this compression of your environment, and then now I have to be proactive and find a way to communicate to family and connect with family and talk to family and see how they're going,
Yeah.
and so if you
Well, and
don't have
how
that
I'm trying to,
conversation, how do you get out of
yeah,
it?
what is right. And I'm thinking, okay, so how could I turn that? Right? What could I do inside of myself? And I'm sitting here going, wow, what an adventure. Cooking by candlelight. Whew,
Yeah.
isn't God great, right? I can still cook by
Yes.
candlelight. And
Yeah.
then because the load shedding, for those of you who don't know, is the electricity gets turned off and it's on cycles,
Yep.
I think, right? Like it's more often than it used to
Yes.
be,
Well, yeah, my
significantly,
granny was
right?
telling me it's been going for 12 years, which I was like, oh wow, but it was very small, like it
Mm-hmm.
was very, but now it's now I think it was like 8 hours of the day at night, so it was like
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, it's in
Yeah, so
cycles, like you said.
all of us
Yeah.
with computers and electricity and air conditioning in like the United States, we can be super grateful that we've got that right now for for most of the day or for what we think we need. But
Yeah.
also, I think in some ways, like what a blessing to connect back with nature. Like that could
Mm.
end up being a huge blessing. So I'm just
Mm.
trying to this is what I do inside of my own head. How can I flip the script to be of
Perspective.
benefit to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. How can even this last weekend, somebody said to me that their perspective on someone else was, I can't remember, but the story was not nice. And I said, well, when you tell that story, I don't like it. So, it's not that they couldn't tell the story. I said, but I'm not going to take that story on as the story I'm going to tell about that person, because when I tell
Mm.
that story about that person, I become mean because if I believe that story, then I'm also believing this and this and this and this, and that's not
We're
who I
taking
want to
on all
be. I
that.
want to be a loving person. Yeah.
Love that. Powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to share like how, because it really can be a trick of the mind
Mm.
of how am I going to and how am I going to make it through this, number one, but how am I going to make it through this and feel free to get through this? Like,
Yeah.
how can I be free? It's like this
Yeah.
huge freedom to be able to choose joy when everyone else is choosing misery.
Yeah, yeah. And when it's all around you. And I mean, and the thing is, like we can talk about, and look, what you're saying, I think my, you know, with what humans have created and what we can create and how capable people are, and looking towards success and how much success certain people make in the world, and just like mind-blowing success, especially in the last few years, and how organizations, institutions, like just seeing what infrastructure, what has been built. For me, that thing of like, aren't we lucky, is two-part, because like, yes, gratitude is important, but we should all be striving for excellence. No one should have to be going through that sort of stuff. Like when we know what to do, like when we know how to organize ourselves, like when we know how to we need to do better, we need to get better. And that's my true belief. And I think even in Western countries, where you have everything, and it's that whole thing, Western countries where you have everything, you like can be surrounded by, like what you said, misery. And sometimes you go to African countries or Asian countries, and similarly people like have, or we perceive have nothing, but they have family or they have a reason to fight. And sometimes the craziest thing is they have more of a reason to fight every day, because hey, I need to go and get some food in my daughter's belly today. I need to get out there. I need to find a way, and I need to do my best I can. And then it's kind of, and you hear about so many success stories where people have come from the depths of hell and come through it. I mean, that's maybe what the conversation was a bit last night, was touching on, is like, don't dismiss that side of life, because that side of life can lend to the other side, if you utilize it properly.
Well, again, I think you're speaking to nothing's either good or bad, just different, right? So And I'm thinking, even in the Western culture, you know, how many things have made our lives so easy, that almost too easy, that we're deteriorating as humans, right? Physically, maybe we're sitting behind a desk all day.
Yeah.
You know, we actually have to push ourselves to get outside and walk the minimum amount of steps.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. Many things, and we're out of touch with nature. So in some ways it's like, okay, we have all these things that are supposed to be great and fantastic, and on the other hand, are they? You know,
Mm.
what happened to nature? What happened to the connection with the universe? What happened to community? And how are we within our community, within our buildings and our walls, with our fences, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, well, a work health and safety client of mine that I saw seen recently, he had a great presentation, and he was talking about like the silent pandemic of sitting in chairs, and he was saying like there's research, but it's such a hard thing like to get governments to move on, and like to get the information out, and like make society aware of, because it's such a slow process. And he said, but people sitting down all day, like the health implications of that, and like saying, we got to like maybe got to get standing chairs. Offices need to kind of develop for standing chairs and things like that. And you're so right, because what did we do? Years and years ago we ran around, and there's so many misconceptions we have, right? So one of the big misconceptions was that people didn't live long back in the day. Back in ancient Greece, or like ancient Rome, those times, and that's not true. You look at some of the philosophers and you see what age they died at. They died, in their 70s. They died, some died 80s. Like they lived a long life, but the average age was brought down because a lot of people died at birth, or died, because things were filthy, or like that sort of thing, that like lots of kids didn't make it. So it brought it down to people, and there's a misconception, or I don't know if everyone else had this, but I had it too. I was like, back in the day people didn't live long,
Yeah.
and and we get these things, and it's the same thing of limit, like, okay, like 80 is our limit, or 85 is our limit. And when I was in Peru, and I was traveling in Peru, and there was this tour guide, and I saw this tour guide, there was some old person like kicking a ball around, and I was like, oh, who's that? And he said, oh, that's my father. And this tour guide was like an old, like 50-year-old, 50-something lady. And I said, how old's your father? And she said, oh, he's 75. And I said, he's 75 and he's running and kicking a ball. I'm like, that don't happen in the West. That shiz does not happen where I'm
Well,
from. And
yeah.
the thing, and the thing that she told me next was that they got DNA from skulls in Peru 400 years ago, and scientists found that those people lived to 120 years old. And you're looking at a time where there's no hospital, or I don't know, maybe it was a makeshift hospital back then. I got no idea what they exactly had back then, but
Well, they had
they
herbs
basically,
and things,
they
right?
ate
Like,
from the ground, and they had that sort of thing, and they lived at such high altitude, so their lungs and everything was just like pumping at such vitality, and like everything was strong. It had to be strong to
yeah,
survive. And it's
yeah,
what you're talking about. The environment can make you stronger, or it can make you weaker. Which I guess
yeah.
is what you're
Well,
talking about.
and I think how we perceive the environment too, like nature is bad, or cold is bad, or hot
Cold's
is
so good.
bad.
Cold exposure is so
Like,
good.
it's
Yeah.
so good.
Oh man,
Um,
cold showers,
yeah,
like for your heart, are so good. And also, like for me, I don't know why, but I feel like when I have a cold shower, it like spiritually cleanses me. Like it gets like the spiritual waste or attachment, or maybe shitty people that I've met recently, or whatever. Like a kind of, or my own shitty attitude. It's like it just kind
well,
of,
you can't think about anything else in the cold shower, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like you go to heaven in the cold shower, I think, in some
Yeah, I
level,
like
right?
that.
Like
I like that.
like
That's
it's a
awesome.
total, it's a reset. But back to that study you were talking about, like, oh, we need to get maybe standing desks or this or that. And I'm thinking again, we have this idea that people need to be behind the desk. And I
Wow.
don't
Good,
think
good
that's true.
perspective.
I
Good
just,
perspective.
talk about
Yeah.
self-inflicting misery on us.
Mm,
Oh, if if you're behind the desk, you're going to be productive. Well, guess what? If you take a break and you go outside and you commune with nature and you come back, sometimes you're even more productive. Most
mm,
times, I would bet you're more productive than if you just went to the break room and sat down again. So I
yeah.
really want to get maybe just the idea started that it doesn't have to be a sitting or standing desk. Maybe it's a walk outside, you know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
moving our body and connecting with nature. There's something in me right now that it's like nature, connect
Yes.
with nature.
Yeah. And going out and connecting with people and like, I mean, I'm very old fashioned maybe with the way that I, in some ways, do business and marketing and things like that. And I do stuff online as well, and I get messages and emails and a lot of that, like a lot of inquiries come through email and things like that. So, but I also love going to a network event, meeting people, and I always, and it's so funny. I always go there like, oh God, like I don't have time for this, or you're getting that whole thing, and then you leave, and you're like, God, I got to do that more. I really got to do that more, And
Like
it's
your
the
cold
same thing.
shower.
Yeah, it's a whole cold shower like experience, but it's going out and meeting people and putting skin to skin and shaking hands and connecting with humans and having that social contact, especially post the last few years we've had, is so important, and maybe that's a silver lining from the last 2 years, is that we maybe were connecting to devices, and the virtual, and we forgot about the human, and then when we were like banned from the human contact, seeing a smile, all those sorts of things, then we had to look in people's eyes and really see a smile in their eyes, or whatever it was. It's like that's that human contact, and you build relationships a lot stronger, a lot deeper, and you can actually, and it's the same thing with Zoom, right? There was this whole thing about Zoom fatigue, and I was like, why am I getting tired on like Zooms? And what someone was saying is that you have to read a lot of body language. So with me and you, like, we're pretty comfortable. So doing this, like, I'm not feeling tired. But maybe if you've got a meeting with a client, and they're like really standoffish and really, like stern, and then you're trying to communicate to them and share what you can, offer, and see if it's a solution, if it helps them, and find what their pain point is, or what they need help with, or how you can, help them with what they're going through. And so when you're doing that, you're really trying to read a lot of body language. And when you're in person, you're naturally able to do that. Like, you're able to see things. Yeah, but in Zoom, you get this little box, and it's virtual and digital, and maybe
Yeah.
like a bit of a lag, and you're just your mind, you're naturally you're overcompensating and trying to read all that, And so sometimes it's that thing of
Maybe.
like, let me remove myself a bit from needing all these confirmations from the person, all these social
Yeah.
signals, and just
Well,
sharing and having confidence in what I'm sharing.
I'm just wondering, because HeartMath did some studies, and what they're talking about is the reality is we don't need that. We can send heart and have that connection with people, whether or not we get into their space or not, and it can also happen over the computer or over Zoom. But my thought, because they also have the Global Coherence Initiative, which is where you send heart to the earth and to other areas that might need help, and that's actually a free app that you can get, and it has heart rate variability on it and things like that. But I'm wondering, just as a thought that popped into my mind, if it's, number one, was it because we didn't know that we could do that as a species, right? That we could connect, that we have a connection across time and space? Or is it that we have to, that we're pushing further through that time and space, or we think we're pushing further through that time and space, even though it folds. My belief is it folds in on itself. So like me talking to you right now, we are in that connected zone, right?
Yeah.
Is how I'm looking at it. So I'm just throwing out those ideas because I think maybe even by not having those conversations and giving enough breaks for going outside, and maybe though some of like the students or the kids didn't take that opportunity, it could have been turned into a game or something like that. Go outside and take a picture of yourself in your backyard or outside sitting on the grass or something. So because otherwise it is just the computer and the electronics and the overwhelm of technology, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well,
I don't know.
one of the great things that I've got a kid doing some work experience with me, and chatting to him and him like talking about school and all these different sort of things, and he's just like he's loving it because it's like he's actually getting to see me work with clients. He's getting to see that interaction. He's getting to see what it's like behind the scenes, not just the front of a business where it's like, oh, it's pretty and, we service you and we're all dandy and happy. It's like, well, what's all the processes behind the scenes? What do you have to do to, be able to lock that client in for an appointment and what do you have to do to build a reputation and all these different things. So him getting out in the world through me is helping him, and he's like super grateful. And I don't know if I spoke about it before, but one opportunity I had was to get him on a radio show, because for a short period of time I was hosting this radio show, and I was like, all right, why don't I mentioned to the co-host, I said, can I get him on? He said, yeah, for sure. And he left and he was like, man, like I got to say, one thing that I've learned from like working with you, one thing that's helped me a lot with is my social communication skills, like my social skills. I was like, wow, if I could give him anything, or if I could help him with anything, it would be social skills, because I think that's going to be such a challenge going forward for the future generations that depend on devices. And one thing that I'd probably just want to finish on would be what we were talking about earlier about being hard on ourselves, our environment compressing us, all those sorts of things. And in terms of like self-infliction, I think it's the big thing for me, like on what I was doing, is I was self-inflicting because I wasn't communicating, I wasn't connecting. And I think what it was is that I wasn't considering myself more important or above my current pain, and I wasn't considering what I could create, what I could do, what potential I had more important or more above, or than the current situation, current environment. And I think a big thing where we can self-inflict ourselves is being caught up in that energy in motion. But like you said, and I think this goes back to exactly what you said at the start, and storing it here. And like you said, and you were saying nature, there's nature. For me, it was, working out, like whatever it is, like finding those valve, like a heart, like those valve outlets where you can get that stuff out. Otherwise, you holding on to things is a form. And that's where I feel like I really created a lot of my challenges when I was younger, my sickness, is that I created it because I held on and I didn't know how to find that valve release. So being aware of how am I self-inflicting myself, because you might think that, hey, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do different sort of things, but hey, what do you do with the mind?
Are you blaming yourself? Are you putting yourself down? Looking at the people around us will tell us too a lot about ourselves, and if they're brave enough. I love, it was quite a few years ago, I sent out a text to family and friends, and I quite literally asked them to tell me things they loved about me and things they didn't like about me, and not many responded, which actually told me something. Some people responded with all the good things. They didn't want to tell me things that maybe they didn't like about me. It was a great lesson for me to be open to that feedback, how important it is to get that feedback for maybe how I'm inflicting that pain and suffering on myself and maybe even on others around me. But it's that was definitely a humbling experience, and it was so neat because when I did get the ones back that were willing to take that risk, I knew that they loved me. Like at their very core, they were like, you know what, this might hurt her and she will still love me, and they knew that, and I knew that. So it actually brought us closer together.
I
It's
love
so
that.
that we could talk about that pain and suffering, and it brought us closer together. You know, it was what I was doing. I didn't know some of the things I didn't know, and some of the things I was like, oh yeah, yep, okay, I definitely got to work on that some more.
Angela, that is awesome. Well, to conclude what I was thinking, I know I said earlier that the takeaway or the homework piece could be our cosmic goal,
Yeah,
to lift us out, and definitely can be. But also, I don't know if you got it from a book, because I remember reading a book a couple of years ago, and it said this. It said a similar thing. It said message your family and friends and ask them for feedback. And I actually think I've did that once, and I got such an amazing amount of people that like that gave me feedback. Some people, like you said, similar sort of thing, was like, oh, I'm not sure, like kind of dodging it, or like quiet, or that sort of thing. And it was an interesting social experiment. Um, some people actually did give me criticism, and I was like, look, I think you're doing this and this, but I'm not sure about this, or that they gave me the feedback, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm glad to see. So maybe, and I was thinking as you said that, maybe that's a thing to do regularly, because also what happens, and if you're trying to build something and create something, and in a totally transparent way, uh, if you want to get people interested and get your tribe interested in what you're doing, then you engage them. If you want engagement, you engage them in your story, in your journey. And a part of that engagement is, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. By the way, I'd love some feedback from you. How do you think, I'm doing here, here, and here? And I remember reading that from a book and doing it. So maybe that could be the takeaway exercise. What do you think?
yeah, that sounds fantastic. I think it's gonna. Let's see. We've got a few newsletters already loaded, but I think I'm going to have to put that on the very next one we load. I
Okay.
think I will. That is my plan. So that would be
Because
probably
I got
the
so much
third
away
week
from
in
it too.
October. Oh yeah, no, for me. It was fantastic, and it was like the 2-star review I got on my book. I mean, I've got all these 5 stars, and then I got a 2-star.
Yeah.
And I was grateful.
Yeah.
They felt safe enough to say what they felt.
Yeah.
And, I was able to take it and go, okay. And that's okay. They can feel that way. I know for me, my book is full of pain and suffering, and I thought I was in hell.
Yeah.
They may feel like that wasn't hellish enough, and that's okay. Like, so
Yeah.
it is, and also very sad that it
Yeah.
wasn't hellish enough for them.
Yeah.
But also, I'm grateful. I am grateful because that means that I don't know. I just remember when I first saw it, and I was like, "Oh, thank goodness, my first one," and it was okay.
Yes.
I mean, I can handle it.
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
handle it, and I could still love. I don't know who that person was. I can love them though.
Yeah.
I can
Someone
love them.
said to me, "Well done, well done." Someone said to me, very, when you start sharing the book and people like start saying it in social settings and family and friends, and it was like an extended family dinner, and this guy he was an Australian, I think, Olympian water polo, I think I'm not sure if he was a gold medalist, but yeah, he was proper Olympian. And he was like very interested. Oh, you wrote a book, blah blah. And he's like, and then he said, but okay, but have you got any negative reviews? Like, are you worried about any negative reviews and what people might say? And I was like, oh, to be honest, I hadn't thought about that just yet. I hadn't got that in my head. I've been so focused on getting getting it out in the right way, doing the best that I can. And it was just an interesting perspective. It's like, okay, this is something to consider that lots of people consider. And I love what you said. Once you get that, it's kind of like, okay, I got through that. I got through that experience. Like, that's okay. I'm still, I'm still okay. I'm still here. And it's that thing, our mind can get us. And who knows, for that person, maybe that was something holding them back from writing a book. oh my God. And like I've said, I don't know if I said it before, but Australia, like my vision of Australia, or what my grandfather's probably how he experienced Australia, and he's such a happy man. So like he was the happiest man I know. But he calls a spade for a spade, and like he'll say things, like, oh, they still so they still treat us like what do they call criminals in this country, like with the coming from England, and like like all the criminals like that they shipped off to Australia and all that sort of stuff, and those sorts of things. And so it's kind of like that, like aggression of police, like guilty till proven innocent, and over legislating a country until it just like loses its entire juice. But anyway, so one of the things of Australia was very much like, you leave you to do you and I'll leave me to do me, and that kind of like that Buddhist sort of thing, like you go do your life, I'll do my life, and like we'll just be in harmony, and I won't suppress and compress and try and dictate authority to you at every moment's notice. So one of the funny things through that whole experience was realizing that what I perceived of what I thought it was and what it really was different, and that created a social compression of people to be, and they call it tall poppy syndrome here, but there's so many different social things of like group think, and oh my God, what will people think of me? How will they see me? Oh my God, can I go out and do my thing? Oh my God. And there was this great speaker that went to, and I don't know where in the US he went, because I'm sure it's not the same everywhere, but he went to somewhere in the US, he spent a few years building his business, and he said, he was on stage, he said, I love Australia, like I love this country, but the difference between Australia and America is that in Australia, you tell people, oh, I'm going to build a business. And they say, are you sure? You get all this kind of compression and this kind of confinement, and this, oh, who do you think you are? You think you're better than me? You think you're bigger than me? You're arrogant. You got that ego. You got that too good. You think you get all that sort of stuff. It's like, whoa, I don't know what, like they're mirroring whatever they've got inside of them, and he said, but then, I was in a bar, like you'll say like, oh, I think I'm going to start a dog walking business. And then all the people at the bar come over to you and like, oh my God, that's so great. What are you going to do? I've got some dogs. My sister's got dogs. Oh my God. I can, and it's like the different energy frequencies of like pumping you up and like going, go for it, man. Just run after it. Go for it. Follow your dreams, to like, who the hell do you think you are that you're better than me, sort of thing. And it was interesting. This guy's like an Olympian and he's having these thoughts. It's like, man, you were an Olympian. Like you did well. Like, you definitely went through the process of failure and success and suffering and overcoming. And when you write a book, you might get a bad review. You might get 10 bad reviews, but you're going to keep going. Like, and it's that whole compression.
Yeah.
I can't accept the negative. And if society says to me, who do you think you are? Then that's too much for me, and it's, anyway.
I don't know about you, but I want to be the man in the arena, marred with blood and sweat and tears, rather than in the stands. Like, and I can't remember if that's in a Brene Brown. Yeah, it's in a beginning of a Brene Brown book. I think it's in the beginning of Daring Greatly. But anyway, we are way past our time. So you guys have your homework. Ask for feedback. And how are you self-inflicting, right?
Yep. How are you self-inflicting?
Yeah.
Yep. Ask for feedback and find a cosmic goal that can lead you out of it. So maybe to combine it could be, if you've got a cosmic goal, you got something you want to reach, maybe when you're doing the feedback, you can share the goal. I know people say keep your goals secret, but maybe when you share the goal, you start to realize who's really in your corner and who's not really in your corner, and who's, deceitfully or maybe under the rug trying, not wishing you to succeed, because then that pushes pain into them of why they're not succeeding. So that could be a way. So cosmic goal, think of cosmic goal, and get a review on feedback.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, well, I'm Angela.
Awesome. I'm Kyle.
And we'll see you next week.
Oh yeah, Destiny of Your Soul next week. Sorry, I just threw that in there. Just
you did.
I threw a spanner in the works. In Australia, there's a saying, the spanner in the works, which means you threw somebody out of their flow.
It's okay. Should we do it? Should we try and do it together?
Yeah.
Let's try in 3. Yeah. Okay. Well, do you want me to say Angela and you'll say Kyle, and then we'll do the Destiny? Okay. Yep. And I'm Angela.
I'm Kyle. And
And
this
this
is
is the
the
destiny
destiny of your
of
soul.
your soul.
We're
See you
gonna
later.
get it. We're gonna get it.